Alabama welcomed Texas A&M Tuscaloosa yesterday, and it was the battle of Jimbo versus Saban after all of the talking that ensued during the offseason. The press conference in Levi's heard around the world, talking about NIL, talking about Saban. Like, if you were living under a rock, I'll give you the condensed version. Nick Saban, at a function, doesn't know he's on camera, says A&M bought all their players that they just recruited in this previous recruiting class. Jimbo Fisher calls a press conference the next day and goes after Saban and says, check on him. If you think that he's so great, if you think that he does things all the right way, check on him. This is despicable. We have to even have this conversation around 17-year-olds and their families. He's taking shots at them. Basically, it felt like we watched their relationship go up in flames before our very eyes. Now, during pregame, it looked like they were friendly. Nothing that would draw too much attention to the Saban versus Jimbo storyline, but I think that's something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the rest of this whole NIL saga. Regardless, both teams were playing without their starting quarterback. Max Johnson, broken hand, looks like he's done for the year. Haynes King, we benched you. Just kidding. We want you back in the game, kid. You're starting versus Bama. Jalen Milroe, we talked a lot about Bryce Young. Will he be able to go? Will he not be able to go? Looks like it's going to be at least another week for him. I'd be surprised if we don't see him play against Tennessee, but Jalen Milroe was in the ball game yesterday, and I mean, really, where do we start? I mean, Alabama, to put it simply, looked very un-Bama-ish the duration of this game. And not just the turnovers. Like, the turnovers, I think you could attribute to, quite frankly, a lot of them were attributed to Jalen Milroe. He had a pick. He had 2 fumbles. His first start, he was sort of getting his feet under him. I don't want to be too harsh there, but the unsportsmanlike penalties, you saw 2 of those from Bama. Jason McClellan, he coughs it up. They're typically pretty consistent kicker, misses field goals in a very key moment. Like, there was a lot of things from Bama where you're just sitting there saying, they going to turn it on anytime soon, or is this just sort of the Alabama team that's showing up today? It didn't feel like a Nick Saban coached Alabama team. So they've got a long way to go. We're going to get to more of that in a segment here, but why was it so close? Why was a 24.5-point spread a 4-point game with Texas A&M a chance to win it in the last play? Alabama looked very un-Alabama-ish the duration of the game, and Texas A&M, credit to them, they caused a lot of chaos. On top of that, I didn't feel like Alabama managed Jalen Milroe very well. I'm not an offensive coordinator. I've never called a play in my life in a college football game. I imagine there's a lot of pressure and a lot of decision-making that goes into what gets called. But with my own 2 eyes, I'm looking at this and I'm saying Jalen Milroe is a freak show. Like, legitimately, he belongs on another planet. Why are we having him run Bryce Young's offense? Now, that may not be what it was to a T, but that's how it felt to me. You're asking Jalen Milroe to drop back and throw the football. You're asking him to turn around and hand it to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's all well and good. Have you seen that video of him doing those hang cleans? I don't want to read in too much of what the internet is throwing my way, but I'm just saying, I know a freak when I see one. Let that man do some zone read. Let him do some quarterback design runs. Let him have a quarterback power or 2. Let him throw that off play action. There wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of catering to what I felt like would be Jalen Milroe's strengths. And so that was confusing to me. Again, Alabama knows what they're doing, but from where I was sitting, I felt like they very much so could have catered more to what Jalen Milroe does well. Felt like they were trying to run Bryce Young's offense with Jalen Milroe. Was a bit confusing to me. Alabama still has problems in the secondary. And I don't want to put all this on Alabama didn't do this, and not give Texas A&M any credit. But Alabama with a 24.5-point spread, like, some things you have to do poorly for that to be a 4-point game, and that was the case. Now, going back to A&M, they had some receivers make plays. Evan Stewart, 8 catches, over 100 yards. He's a dog. Dude's only a freshman. I mean, he was at prom not too long ago at this point last year. And he had some plays in this game where you're just looking like, man, if people still had posters, if those were still a thing that people hung on their wall, Evan Stewart put a few Alabama DBs on posters. And consistently, he made plays. To the same token, there were a lot of plays where we saw Alabama just hanging on receivers and drawing pass interference penalties. This is not the first time we've seen this. Remember the Texas game not too long ago? PI after PI, Quinn Ewers or Hudson Card, whoever it was, is throwing up a 50-50 ball, and likely there's a flag coming down or that Texas receiver is coming down with the ball. That was kind of the same sentiment. You got Tennessee next week, Bama. That can't be the way that you go about this game. That can't be the storyline next week. Otherwise, we're having another conversation here on Sunday talking about, wow, how did Tennessee pull off that upset? I'm not saying it's the case. I'm saying there's something to get shored up if you're an Alabama defensive back. Now, it wasn't all bad. Obviously, still made the play to win the game on the last play. Terrion Arnold is a dude. There's not all just bad in that secondary. There's a lot of things that you can pull from, but I'm just saying there's a lot that you got to get figured out as well. I mean, they really could have won the game. You have a safety tugging on a receiver downfield to make it a game at the very end, to draw a pass interference, to give Texas A&M a chance to win the game. It's concerning. We keep seeing the same thing from the secondary. It's a little bit concerning. At the end of the day, though, Alabama has Jahmyr Gibbs. And credit to that offensive line, credit Jahmyr Gibbs. They leaned on him a lot, and for good reason. He toted the rock to the tune of 150-plus yards, and that was what allowed this offense to consistently stay on schedule. Took pressure off Jalen Milroe, allowed the rest of the offense to open up. That was the difference maker for them. Because when I'm looking at Alabama in a much more broad sense, I think we see two things. One, this Alabama team is still a long way off from where Nick Saban expects them to be, and they will, in my mind, continue to trend that way. I think they'll still make progress to get there. But make no mistake about it, they're not there yet. They typically play their best ball in November and into the bowl season. They're not there yet. On top of that, Bryce Young, we saw just how much he means to that team. And you're saying, no, Doug, he's got a Heisman Trophy on his mantle, my guy. Of course he means a lot to this team. Yeah, I understand that. But Bryce Young really seems like he's lifting a lot more of that load than maybe some of us anticipated. Because he was, honestly, I mean, let's talk about this team as a whole. There was much less composure from this team watching them play yesterday. So that concerned me a little bit. You hope you get him back sooner. You don't anticipate having to play without Bryce Young when you kick off against Tennessee or whoever it is in a big game. But we saw just how much of an impact number 9 makes for them when he's in the game. So for A&M now, bye week, and the noise around Jimbo Fisher is just going to go like this. You just kind of turn that dial up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and it's just going to be all around them. He's not going to get fired. A&M's got a lot of money. They don't want to spend that much money to get him out the door. I don't think they want to get him out the door to begin with. We sat right here on this desk and told you we think A&M's going to go 8-4 this year. And we got a lot of you wonderful people in the comment section telling us that you felt otherwise, to put it kindly. A&M's going to be okay in the future, in my opinion. They got to make some very big changes, but I think they're going to be okay because they have so much talent. Anytime you have talent, you have a starting point. Now, what's 2022 going to look like for them the rest of the way? I still think 8-4, 7-5 is a pretty realistic expectation, to be honest with you, especially with Haynes King playing quarterback. But going back to what I said about talent, if they didn't have guys on this program, you could have more concern. If you don't have talent, then you can start pounding the alarm. Anytime you have talent, it means you have the ingredients. It means you have square one taken care of. Now you have to develop that talent, have to put it in position to succeed, have to execute in situations. Makes it a lot easier when you got guys. So I still think they're a year away from living up to what I think a lot of the national types with blue checks next to their name want to talk about. But for 2022, you're going to have to hear crazy people calling into the Paul Feinbaum show saying egregious things, and you're going to have to live with the overrated label around this program the rest of the way. Is it fair? It's not for me to say. Is it true? Probably so. Again, Alabama finds a way to win. They survived setup Saturday, getting a big-time win over Texas A&M in the Jimbo versus Saban Bowl, 24-20. I tell you what, they gave you the whole seed, though. You only needed the edge, Nick. It was a good one. It was a very, very good game. And credit to Haynes King. He played a lot better than I thought he would be able to. Credit to his receivers for making big plays for him really all game long. So Haynes King could be the guy it looks like they ride with the rest of the way. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.